Okay, I see a few students now. All right, this will
Okay.
work. All right, how many people have we got in the class today?
You have 13 students.
13 students. Okay, not bad. I will get started and I'll try to make sure that I keep this under 15 minutes for you guys, okay? All right, so my name is James Johnson II. I was born and raised here on the near east side of Indianapolis. I'm actually a graduate of the one and only Arsenal Technical High School. Then I also went on to graduate from Ball State University in 2008. Just to let you guys know a little bit about my path, in the years immediately after college, I'd say I was still kind of finding my niche professionally. I worked in a call center, I translated Spanish for a few years, I coached baseball for another year and a half, and then finally I took on a temporary role that would later lead me to managing an entire department. After about 4 years there, I was offered a package to move to Atlanta to kind of further my corporate career, but I chose to transition into a different role and stay here in Indy. So I'd say for about the past 5.5 years, I've been a department district manager. And what that means is that I'm responsible for about 13 project managers, and I work with about 12 to 15 stores that on average bring in about $300 million plus annually. So CLD asked me to talk to you guys today about tips for post-secondary planning as well as career success, and then also kind of how I benefited from CLD myself. And I'm sure you guys already know in time, on time, every time. We've got a lot of little phrases and catchphrases and things like that that kind of stick with us over time. I'd say several things stuck with me. They just didn't all kind of hit and come back, or they didn't all hit me at the same time. So it was kind of stuff that I discovered throughout my career. So first thing I'd like to ask, and I got a few questions for the crowd here. If you guys can raise your hands if you signed yourself up for this class. All right, you can put your hands down. Now, what about if your parents signed you up for this class? Raise your hand. Okay. What about who really likes to come to the class? Raise your hand. You keeping an eye on this? Okay, you can put your hands down. Who does not like to come to class as much? You can be honest here. So, okay, go ahead and put your hands down. So the reason I ask is because I know it can be a little bit uncomfortable, but I've learned that discomfort can be good in a lot of ways. We end up learning things by trial and error. So just as much as you can learn by watching somebody else, you can learn from trying it yourself. I could sit up and I could watch a million great Barack Obama speeches, but that's not going to make me an effective speaker. If I don't ever get up there and figure out how to work out the butterflies, the nerves, the stutters, how to spread out your eye contact, those things all come with practicing great habits over and over, which you guys are actually kind of already doing right now. So when I think back to my CLD experiences, mostly I think of summer programs that I was a part of in high school. And as a young man of color, like most of us, I was completely delusional in thinking that I was going to go to the league and play sports. I just thought I was going to play football and baseball all my life because that's pretty much what I did every year in high school. And in the summers and off seasons, I would usually take part in some type of engineering or technology program, Minority Engineering Advancement Program of Indianapolis, Center for Leadership Development, all kind of things like that. So I still remember when I was 13 years old, against my will, because keep in mind, your mom probably had to sign you up. My mom had the presence of mind to reach out to CLD and sign me up for a program that was called Project Mister. This was a once a week Thursday night thing that went on at the Children's Museum for about 2 hours. And man, to me, that wrecked 13-year-old me. I did not want to spend 2 hours at the Children's Museum on Thursday night when I should be watching wrestling or some type of Pacers or football updates. But I grew up in the age before DVRs. So missing out on that time meant that I didn't get to go back and watch whatever television program that I was missing. So I was definitely a little bit discouraged my first few times in Project Mister as a 10, 11-year-old because I thought I know all about this male responsibility crap. You know, what is this about? I got a dad in my household. But over time, I grew to learn that, like a lot of other dads of my era, those guys were at work all the time, and we didn't always get to have the pointed, no nonsense type of talks and conversations we would have in Project Mister. So I'll say I didn't necessarily love the experience at first, but it did help younger me to kind of find my voice and be comfortable. So 2 years later, mom signs me up for another program, Self-Discovery Career Exploration, the very same program that you guys are in right now. I vaguely remember my career goal presentation. I think I said I wanted to be I mumbled something about wanting to be an engineer, and I tried to get off the stage as quickly as possible. And I'll say at that age, I don't even think I was too well versed in like the different types of engineers, but I'll say I got through it with the grace of God. So when I finished that long 13 weeks, I thought I had finally escaped the clutches of Center for Leadership Development. You know, victory was mine. I was going to hang out, have all my free time in the summer, and I wouldn't have to worry about all this pesky character development stuff that everybody kept talking about. So next summer, my mother told me about a new initiative she had heard from CLD called BOP, or Business Orientation Project. I mean, my mom probably had me signed up before I could even slump back in my chair and say, oh, I don't want to do it. I mean, I was signed up immediately. And this program was an 8-week program. It was every Saturday morning for about 2 hours at IUPUI. And we would get together and kind of split up and run these mock businesses. We would talk about profits, loss, costs, taxes. We talk about everything, even down to employee wages. I mean, it was kind of fun, but I was thinking in my head, come on, Mom, you're killing me. And on top of that, I got 3 older sisters, so they didn't get to escape from the CLD programs either. They went to every program that I went to, and they went the year before. So when I think back to how often my mom was at CLD, I kind of laugh. And we always talk about Mr. Bland having a statue or something. And I joke that if he has a statue at CLD, my mom needs to have a statue right behind him, like handing him a child, because that's how often that we were, coming up to CLD. So I get through Business Orientation Project. The next summer, you guessed it, Mom hit me up and said, hey, CLD's got a new program for you. It's called SAT Prep. And I ended up doing SAT Prep 1 and 2 that summer. Each one was like a 4-week initiative that they hosted over at Butler. And all we did pretty much was get together and go over different test-taking strategies and things like that. So that's all I did for a summer. I just took a lot of tests. I really can't make this up. So let's go ahead and skip ahead to the past few years. We skip ahead to 2014. In my career, I was getting promoted to a new management role, and my VP was going around the office telling everybody how I was such an effective leader, and I demonstrated these great character values, and the promotion was really a bit of a surprise to me. I was in my career and I was achieving new highs without even trying. I even got an alumni update from CLD like the next few days. And I thought, you know what, I could give back a little bit. I can do some community service. So I reached out and I told them I would facilitate the next Project Mister cohort. And I thought, oh man, this is cool. Everything is coming back to full circle. After doing that Project Mister cohort, I kind of found myself re-energized. I started teaching other classes like self-discovery, Imani Book Club, junior self-discovery. I did another Project Mister cohort the next fall. I did all of that without even realizing the commitment I was making to serving my community. So when I look back and I look at you guys, I didn't necessarily realize the blank canvas that I was, but CLD imprinted certain things on me that I didn't realize until years later. So as a college freshman, when I had to stand up in front of 300 people in a college auditorium, and I had to give a speech during my communication class in the freshman year of college, yeah, I was definitely nervous, but I stepped up and aced it because I had already had a ton of practice. When I took over a new team at work that was especially challenging, I was able to effectively lead them to their new goals because I'd already had a ton of practice. When I stepped up to take on more opportunities to mentor with other organizations, and I later became the president of a youth fraternity, I had already had a ton of practice. So from 2014 to now, here we are, 7, almost 8 years later, I've started my own initiative called the Idea Factory. And basically all I do is I teach a technology class at Thrival Academy. But outside of that, I believe in teaching technological advancements to young people of color. I think that is the best way to make sure that we keep pace with the evolving job market. So that's a little bit about me. You can find all of my stuff online on Instagram under 317 Idea Factory. We've also got a YouTube and a Patreon that's under the Idea Factory. And if you guys do check the YouTube, I just uploaded a video about an hour ago that's me kind of showing people how to get into 3D printing and different things like that. So that's a little bit about me. That's my story. That's what I've learned from CLD and how it's kind of helped me in my career. Are there any questions for you guys? I know that I had at least 15 minutes. I talk pretty fast. I'm kind of excitable. So you can definitely use any of the additional time that you guys got for questions. What are you guys thinking in your sessions? What are you going through? How do you feel about CLD? Other places that it may have helped me in my career. If there are any questions, you guys can feel free to hit me with them. I got nothing but time for you.
James, I have a question.
Yes.
When you were in CLD and we talked about, studying tips, how did that translate when you became a freshman at Ball State?
Woo. Okay, so studying tips. I'll tell you, it's also because we really broke this session down when I was teaching self-discovery. One thing that students don't understand is that in high school, you're in school 30 to 40 hours a week. The expectation is that, you do whatever homework you can get done. When you get to college, it's kind of a culture shock because you're most likely only in school 12 to 16, 17 hours a week. So you're pretty much cutting your school time in half. And if you don't already have effective study habits, you will get pretty far behind. One thing you'll notice in high school is that a teacher they'll kind of test you before the test. So they'll give you homework and they'll kind of check your homework to make sure you're trending in the right direction before you guys actually come to the test. In college, it's totally different. If you don't have effective study habits or if you don't know how to test and pre-test yourself, then you'll be kind of left out there because you'll have a class, let's say it's a 3 credit hour class. So you could have the class Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for 1 hour a day. In a lot of cases, that's not enough time for graduate assistants or teacher's assistants to grade your papers, answer your questions, different things like that. So you need to be able to, 1, study on your own, but then 2, when you come to the class the next day, when you come to class a few days later, they're really not going to go over the homework to make sure everybody has an understanding of it. The most that they'll do is probably answer a few questions. If there was something confusing in the book, they may touch on that. But usually what they do is they immediately move to the next section. And in college, it's cumulative. So every professor expects you to remember everything that you've learned from the very first week of the semester to the 12th week of the semester. So that's why in college you have finals. They won't necessarily check your homework on a weekly or a daily basis. The big check your homework moment is at the end of the semester when you go take the final. So that can be a bit of a culture shock just because going to college, when you're in high school, there are very few classes where you have one thing and that one thing is 70% of your grade. But in college, that's much more the norm. So I know that can be, like I said, just a culture shock to us. But if you already have your study habits down pat and you're already used to, hey, I study 2 hours a night, or I study 1 hour per subject, or I study this many hours per subject per week. If you don't already have that lined up, then you can have a tough time as you go through college. All right.
Okay. One of the questions is, do you think the SAT prep program was helpful to you while taking the SATs and the ACTs?
Oh, definitely. I thought it was helpful. I didn't think it was helpful at that time because keep in mind, this was about, I'm not going to age myself, but this was about 20 years ago for me over at Butler. I didn't think it was that helpful at that time only because I had only taken the PSAT and the ISTAT and other standardized testing material like that. And I didn't understand that at that time, the SAT had a very specific format to it. And in a lot of cases, if you had good test taking techniques, then you would understand which questions you could skip over, which questions, you would lose the most points for, which questions you needed to at least make a guess for. It also, I always thought I was pretty smart with analogies and different things like that. but it also had a section where they just talked about analogies and similes and different things like that. And they showed me a ton with that I would have never known if I wasn't in that. So yeah, I would definitely say SAT prep was a huge plus for me. I didn't think it at that time, but I also wasn't used to taking those type of standardized tests. So yes, a big help for me.
Next question. Do you think you would have turned out differently if your mom didn't send you to CLD? If so, in what way?
Woo! Would I have turned out differently? So I normally don't play the hypothetical game just because I'm busy living in my current life. Too busy living in my current life to think about all the what ifs and what could have happened. But I will tell you guys, there were several points in my life where I came to an impasse or I came up to an objective, and something that I had learned in CLD helped guide me through it, whether I knew it at that moment or not. Just like I said, when I had to step up in front of 300 people my freshman year in college and speak for a communications class, there were people that were ready to jump out the window. There were people that were getting sick, sweating backstage, all kind of stuff. And I had my notes. I felt prepared. I had already stood up and spoke in front of my peers several times before. I had already done the thing where you imagine everybody's in their underwear to kind of make you a little bit more comfortable on stage. So I had already gone through a few of those things, and I felt like, okay, I've already practiced. This is game time. You got a 5-minute speech. You've got your 9 flashcards. Go out there and make good eye contact, control your body language and your posture, nail it, and then get out of there. So I do think I would have been in a different place. I'm scared to think where I might have been because there's just a lot of stuff out there to distract us, especially if you are a young black male growing up in the 90s and early 2000s. There were a lot of proverbial traps that we could have got caught in. And I think my mom keeping me involved with sports, but then also with engineering and with CLD type programs, it just took a lot of my what would have been free time and it turned it into more productive time where I learned skills that are still kind of helping me today.
So, next question. There's a student currently signed up for BOP. He wants to know what was your favorite part about it and could it help him in starting his own business?
Yes. So it can definitely help you in starting your own business. I'm 38. I just recently started my own businesses this past few years, and I still lean on some of the principles and things I learned in BOP. And some of the stuff that you guys will actually also learn in self-discovery. For instance, there's a lot of different ways to say money in the business world, but each one means a different thing. When someone says money, our cost, our wages, our rates, our capital. So going through that, I think definitely helped a lot. I don't know if I'm able to put a specific favorite moment on there. I think in BOP, they used to feed us lunch. I used to really like eating lunch there. And we would walk over the Sky Bridge to kind of a new cafeteria that IUPUI had. But honestly, in regards to the programming, there wasn't one specific thing that stood out. I was 15, 16, 17 years old, and I had never run my own business. I definitely wanted to know how to make money and do things like that. But it took it to a new level that I think is great for young entrepreneurs now. I couldn't imagine what the new BOP program is like now, 18 to 20 years later, but I would definitely recommend if you guys have an opportunity to go through it and you've got those 8 Saturdays or those 8 weeks, definitely do it. We went start to finish from a business idea all the way to what will you pay your workers, if taxes take out this much. And there were just a bunch of different scenarios that they threw at us to make sure that we were thinking on the right path.
What tips would you give to students who don't have good study habits?
What tips would I give to students that don't have good study habits? Start reading. That is the biggest issue that I see with our people right now. We only read if it's on our cell phone or if it's on a social media site or something like that. The reason I say start reading is because not only does reading engage both sides of your brain, it engages the left side and the right side. It's one of the few activities that do that. But reading also kind of starts helping to train your attention span. If you guys notice, if you watch TV or anything like that, you can start to time almost when the commercials will come on during your program if you're watching regular TV. And that's because there are social scientists that have figured out the average person that watches this show attention span is this long. So after 5 to 7 minutes, we need to give them a break. And then after 5 to 7 minutes, we give them another commercial break. And that will allow us to kind of retain their attention. So the way to break out of that is to force yourself to do an activity away from the television or music or computer. Force yourself to do an activity away from that, and you start to train your brain to stay on task and on that particular activity longer and longer. So if you don't have great study skills, the first thing you guys already know, CLD's code for success is, 215 177 0. So everyone should already be reading at least 15 minutes a night. That is the bare minimum. You can read 15 minutes just on Instagram a night, but you should definitely be picking up a book or something like that. That's where the majority of the knowledge is at. And as you guys get older, even at my age, they still hand me a portfolio or a binder for training and say, hey, read this. And if I don't have the attention span to sit there and read through a few dozen pages, or at worst case, a few hundred pages, then I'm going to have some problems. So if you don't already have those study tactics, it's a little late in the game, but it's not too late. What you need to do is you really need to pick up a book and start forcing yourself to read that book. And then over time, as you're able to pay attention for more than 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, those same skills will translate to college when if you're studying for a final, you may need to sit there and study for a few hours. You may need to take breaks in between and make sure you're refreshed and your brain is operating at full power. But you need to be able to sit down and and really buckle down for a few hours at a time when it has nothing to do with the computer or the phone or the television.
What tips would you give someone that is undecided about a career they want to pursue? Would you suggest they pursue a career that makes good money or something that makes them happy but not as much money?
Man, this is a tough one here because I'm usually a very black and white person. I'm money motivated. I like my job because it pays a lot of money. I would like to go to other roles in my career that pay more money because money makes the world go round. You need money to pay your mortgage, to pay your car notes, different things like that. But one thing we don't always consider is quality of life. If you're making a ton of money, that's great. But if you're working 80, 90 hours and you don't have any time for your family or any time for your hobbies or anything like that, then you may look back later on in life and wish that you had taken a different path. So I'm not going to just say, hey, follow your heart, because some people's heart tells them to go to college, rack up $80,000 of school loans and then not do anything productive. What I'll say is if you don't have a plan right this second, that is fine. Like I said, it's a little late in the game with some of us being sophomores, juniors, and seniors. If you don't have a plan right this second, that's fine. But you need to start developing a plan ASAP. Even if the plan is just, hey, I really like this career objective. I really like veterinarians. Let me start looking into what it takes to be a veterinarian. Do I need a high school diploma, a college degree? Do I need a post-secondary degree? But if you start with that plan, even if you go home tonight and you say, hey, I have a plan, I need to start working on a plan, that's good, because I have a 15-year-old son and I always tell him here in America, if you don't have a plan, the justice system has a plan for you. So make sure that you are intentional in going in the direction that you want to go in. And one more thing I'll say regarding a plan, and I use this whenever I'm in Project Mister, because their age group is 13 to 16. So sometimes they're a little bit younger than self-discovery. And I ask them, if I give you a boat and I put the boat right on the coast of New York and I need to get the boat to London or to England, and I push the boat off into the water, no captain, no sails, no nothing, no direction. If I push the boat off into the water, what's the odds of that boat making it across the Atlantic Ocean and actually landing in England? And everybody laughs and they say, oh man, that boat's gonna hit an iceberg, or that boat's gonna end up in Brazil. And everybody says like, oh, it'll be like 1 out of a million that boat will end up where it needs to go. And then I tell them, okay, go back to the same scenario. Let's say that I have a boat. I'm right here on the coast of New York. But this time, before I push the boat off, I put a captain on the boat and I whisper in his ear, hey, Captain, I need you to get me to England. And that's it. And now what are the odds of the boat getting to its final destination? And then everybody says, oh, man, 100%, 999,000, because it's got a captain. He can maneuver. And then I tell them that captain is your plan. If you don't have a plan, you could end up in a place that you would like. It's a 1 in a million chance you could end up where you think you want to be or where you want to be. But if you do have a plan or a captain, you're much more likely to get there. Understand? All right. Any other questions? I think we may have had something else in there. Any other questions about CLD, planning for your future, different things you guys may need to do in preparation for college? Any of that. Like I said, I've been around CLD since 2014. I've taught this class, this self-discovery career exploration class, at least 5 to 7 times. So I'm very familiar with the curriculum. Are you guys in about session
12.
Session 12. So this is right before, right?
Yes.
All right. So hopefully everybody is paying attention. They're waiting with bated breath and they've got their presentations ready to go for next week. And if not, I hope as soon as I get off this call that they start writing their prezzies and their PowerPoints right away, because I want everybody to kind of step up there and take this as their opportunity to stand up in front of their peers and do kind of what I said earlier, which is practice. It's very rare that you get an opportunity to stand up in front of others and talk. So you want to make sure that when you do, you're saying something that they want to hear, or you're saying something that's worth hearing. So tomorrow's or not tomorrow, but next week is everyone's opportunity to do that.
Well, thank you so much, James. We really appreciate you coming into our class this evening. Everyone give him a round of applause.
Hey. All right. Anything else for me?
In closing, what would you want to share with them that you haven't already?
In closing.
In today's environment and the challenges that they have, what would be one word of wisdom that you would like to impart?
Oh man, there are so many words of wisdom. There were several nuggets or jewels right there that even if they just take 1 or 2 of those, I'll be happy with it. Even if they just take in time, on time, every time, except when a little ahead of time, and that's better time. Even if they just take that and make that their own and start being their most punctual self, they have no idea how far some of these little skills and games that we play in CLD, how much it can help you in your